Welcome to Monday through Sunday. I'm Logan.
I'm Sanam.
And I'm Lane. We're best friends, the founders of Blossom Brands, and the hosts of this podcast.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes of running a 7-figure agency with our best friends.
We're sharing our mistakes, our lessons learned, and giving you tactical advice to build the career, the business, and the relationships you dream of, and a life you don't need a weekend to escape from.
So let's get balanced and let's get down to business. Welcome to the show.
Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the Monday through Sunday podcast. We are so excited to be here chatting with you guys today and to be chatting with each other. It's been a minute since we've recorded. Sanam's been traveling. We've had a lot going on in our lives. So first of all, hi friends, I miss y'all.
I know. I feel like this is the first week in so long that we've all been working. I feel like we were all in LA, and then Logan, you were out of town for a couple days of the week, and then Sanam, you were out of town all last week, and I'm like, I miss you guys. I feel like we haven't all been together in so long, so I'm excited to chat.
We will definitely get to all that, but first, just to preface a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So today we're going to be talking about how to level up in all aspects of your life, personally, professionally, and how you can tap into the power of compounding habits to do so. Lots to dive into. I'm super excited to chat about this topic, but first, let's catch up. How are we doing, gals?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling just really hot today, which is random. I feel like I've been running around all day this morning, just trying to get settled. And it's also 108 degrees in Texas. So I'm just feeling the heat, but I'm also feeling really, really grateful today. I feel like this is the first week in 3 weeks that I've actually had energy. I've been in such a mental, physical, emotional slump for the past 2 weeks straight. And I've literally moved my body for 4 days in a row now, either a workout, a walk, something. And I'm just feeling energetically rejuvenated a little bit. So I'm grateful.
We love that.
You and me both, sister. I feel like everything you said is exactly how my last few weeks have gone. I just got over getting, I don't ever get sick. And I've been sick like a dog the last week plus, and then was traveling right before that. So I really think the last 2 to 3 weeks of my life have been in totally disarray. And yesterday I woke up, the sun was shining, the birds were chirping, I felt good, I could breathe, and I just have a whole new lease on life. So I'm glad. It sounds like we're in the same boat there.
We are in sync, and I can attest to the fact that you were actually really sick. I've never heard you say I'm so sick I'm going to the doctor. I was oh
no. With me, that's when you know.
Yeah.
I'll wait until the 9th day of sickness to be okay,
you
I
literally
guess I
sound night and day
about
from
this.
now versus a few days ago.
Yeah, the beauty of a steroid shot does wonders.
Life-changing.
Did it hurt?
But I did. So I made Andrew go to the doctor with me, not because I really needed him to, but just because I wanted to be taken care of. So I made him take me to the doctor. We went to an urgent care, and he thought he was going to wait in the waiting room. I was like, oh no, you're coming back with me, buddy. So we go back, and the doctor, I had been sick for so long at that point, I didn't have my original sickness anymore. It was it had manifested into a sinus infection. She was really what you need to get better is a steroid shot. And I feel the last time I got a steroid shot was so long ago that I've learned so much, and I feel people talk so much about how steroid shots are really bad for your gut microbiome. And so I was asking her all these questions. I was okay, if I get it, how much sooner will I get ready or get better? If I don't get it, what'll happen? I was asking her all these questions, and she left the room, and Andrew was why did you just grill her? We came here for you to get that exact shot. Why are you doing this? And I was I just want to know all the information.
No, you're making a well-informed decision. You want to know what's happening.
Yeah.
I feel also as people pleasers, sometimes you just want to be okay, yeah, I'll do whatever you say. But you just want to be informed of what you're doing, what you're taking, and it also just makes you feel better about your decision. So I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, for sure did the right thing. But yeah, I was wow, I kind of feel like an adult that I don't just do what people say. I advocated for myself, asked some questions, but Andrew was no, you're just being a pain in the ass. Just take the shot. So literally take the shot in the ass and move on with your life. Aside from that, let's go ahead and transition to our personal and professional best. For those of you who are new here, this is just a little segment where we talk about what our wins of the past week were, whether it was a professional win, something we killed it at work, a personal win, something going great in our personal life, just taking a minute to acknowledge the good in our lives and kind of share that with each other. So Lane or Sanam, do either of you have a personal or professional best?
I do. I have a professional best, which I'm so excited about. We have officially signed a lease on our first office.
Yay.
And it like feels surreal. I can't believe we have an office. It's here in Dallas with Logan and I, and Sanam when she braces us with her presence here in Texas. And so we just got the keys this week. We haven't done a thing yet. And I'm a little overwhelmed with like planning furniture for it. I'm like, I want it to be a place where all three of us can work. We can also podcast. How do we make it soundproof? Like there's just like so many questions, but we're figuring it out and we're so excited.
That is so exciting.
Big girl
I can't believe you
moves.
guys like have a legit office now. I say you guys, like I have no association to it, but like it's just like because I'm not there, but it sounds so amazing.
I can't believe it either. And
I'm
we,
excited.
I'm excited too. I think
And I can't believe you got me on board with being excited about an office, because that's like
I
the
know.
antithesis of everything I've been about the last few years. Like it was kind of your idea, and I was like, okay, if you want that for you, that's great. Don't expect me to. And you were like, no, like I think you're gonna like this, and you talked me
Yeah.
into it. Now I'm excited.
Well, we have all like religiously been obsessed with working from home for the past 5+ years because it gives us balance. It's given us like the ability to really like figure out what works for us from a structure perspective for our lives, from our personal and our professional and work and all the things, and kind of to be able to like do everything at once, but like also find separation. And so I think it's been really, really great working from home. And we were working from home, Sanam and I were, before COVID was even a thing. So we've been doing it for a long, long time now. And I was kind of forced into this because my office is turning into a nursery in 8 weeks from now. Actually, it is now in nursery.
8 weeks?
Yeah, 8
Oh
weeks.
my
Can you believe it?
gosh, no.
I know. I'm like, I'm really starting to, I'm like, okay, 8 weeks, but that means in like 4 weeks, it could be like any day, you know, which
Oh
is
my
crazy.
gosh.
I'm like, I have to get through like the next 4 weeks of really planning, because then it's like, okay, like
That
you
is
never
just
bets
know.
are off.
wild.
You know?
Like, you could literally be with
Oh
child. I'm like,
my
Mom.
gosh.
It really is crazy. But anyways, so yeah, I'm sharing an office right now with Sam, and so I'm like, all right, I need to kind of have my own space. And I think having separation when baby's here, I can like leave my house and feel like I'm working, come home and feel like I'm living my personal life and my family life and have some separation between the two. I'm so excited about it. I'm a little like anxious. It feels like it might not sound like a big thing, but it like feels like a big thing.
What, the
And
office?
Oh,
The office
it's a
thing.
big thing.
It's a big thing, but I don't think you should be stressed. Like, we'll figure out how to, like, plan the furniture and all that. Like, we're going to make
know.
it work, and it's going to be great.
I'm just a planner and I don't have
know.
a plan yet. So
I know. Well, we're going to have a plan on Friday. We have time slated on Friday
Yay,
to figure
I'm
it
excited
out.
for that. Yes,
love
we
it.
will.
Sanam, how are you?
I feel like this week has just been a roller coaster. Like the first half of the week, I was just like in my gratitude era, like literally tearing up from how like grateful I am for my life. I'm turning 30 this weekend, so I just feel like it's just been like a hardcore reflection time, and like there's just so many like expectations you put on yourself, society puts on you, and like turning 30 is just like such a big milestone. And so I feel like I was just feeling so grateful, so happy, blah blah blah. And then this morning I just feel like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I just feel like I had just like so many negative thoughts when I woke up, and then it like spiraled into like more into like other topics that just like were just like giving me like negative energy. And so I was like, okay, I like really need to like change my mindset. And so I put my summer jazz playlist on, and I just sat, put my phone on do not disturb so I would stop getting notifications, and then I just like journaled out like why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I also have not been seed cycling as well as I should have been this month. And so I feel like, and I'm about to get my cycle, so the PMS I think is just like doing its normal thing that I'm just like haven't been used to in so long because I've been so consistent with my regimen. So I'm now in a better mood, but it's the power of habits.
I was just
Oh
going
my
to say,
gosh,
this
yeah.
was so fitting with this episode. You're like, I woke up, this didn't feel good, so I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, I journaled, I did this, I did that, and I'm like, wow, look at you just really
I was
setting
like
the tone for
folding
the
my
day.
laundry that I had like left for like 2 days since I got back, and I was like just putting Taylor Swift on in the background, like vibing, and I was like, this normally makes me happy, and I was just getting into such a spiral. And so anyways, we're better now.
I also want to go back for a second to the first half of your week and feeling in your like lovey gratitude.
Yeah, Layton was the recipient of one of
like
those.
phase. We had like a really, really beautiful heart-to-heart phone call for like
Wait, I didn't know about
15
this.
minutes. It was
It
like
was
random.
like, yeah, I was driving.
Was
She
it
was
yesterday?
driving. No, it was 2 days ago.
Yeah. And you were just telling me about these like beautiful thoughts and perspective shifts that you had like when you were on vacation and talking to your cousins and stuff. And then we just like kind of went through this roller coaster of like how your life has evolved over the past
so
year
deep.
and how mine has. And it was just like real quick but real deep. And like I think like you teared up. It was
I
really
did.
beautiful. And it's like a core memory for me now,
I'm
I
so
think.
glad. I had just come out of my tea meditation that I went to with my cousins, and like it was just this hour of silence, and like you just watch them do this tea ceremony, and then you drink tea like every like 5 minutes that they make for you. Some of them are really intense, some of them are lighter, and I just thought I was going to be silent staring at the wall for an hour, and then all of a sudden I just find my like self with like tears just like coming down, but it was good. It was good.
And I went to Soul Ritual that morning, and I like had like I feel like a very just deep moving spiritual like conversation with a couple people, and then I was kind of in that mindset too, and we'd also gotten like a little bit of a not great slack from a client that morning, and we were both like, it didn't even faze us. We're just in this like beautiful mindset. And it was like, wow, who are we? We had talked for 15 or 20 minutes, and I was like, we haven't even talked about the annoying client thing yet today. Like,
I
look
know,
at us
it
go.
was nice.
That is so amazing. I think first of all, the fact that like going back to Sanam, like you being able to recognize like I didn't wake up feeling the best, but actually knowing what you needed to do to get yourself back on track. I feel like that's half the battle. Like actually learning what those things are that'll make you feel better. And then also just like Lane, your rituals class and your tea ceremony class, Sanam, and Lane and I go to a women's group together in Dallas, and I weirdly cried during a meditation last Friday. So I feel like we've all had these like really weird, vulnerable
We need to
moments
ask Tiffany
lately.
what's going on
Logan.
astrologically.
Yeah.
So in the past 1 week, I've been around people in a meditative state that brought them to tears 3 times now. And I'm like, wow, if everybody could just like observe the power of meditation, like it's really like hitting me this week. Cause I'm like, I've seen 3 people brought to tears from meditation. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so now maybe you were one of them.
yeah.
You told me that
Yeah.
that happened to you. And then it was this girl in my soul rituals class. And I'm like, what is going on? This is crazy.
And then my cousin
There
told me
is
that like
something
Joe
in the
Dispenza
air.
changed her life. And then I was just like, wow, I've just heard Lane talk like so highly about Joe Dispenza. And I'm like, maybe I need to try this.
We're going to have a whole episode specifically on mindfulness and meditation. So we'll dive into that
Okay.
another day.
Yeah. I think that's a good like next topic from this one, because it kind of
Yeah.
carries on the similar theme of those things that you kind of think are bullshit but then actually like really help you. I saw this TikTok, and it was this girl, this was a while ago, but it was a girl with like walking down the streets of New York, and she was like, I have terrible news. It turns out if you wake up at 5 a.m. and drink lemon water and journal and go on sanity walks, it actually makes you feel
did see
better.
that.
And I felt that so deeply to my core, and that's like kind of the whole premise of today's episode, is those things that you like want to cringe or roll your eyes at, and like how they can actually like make your life better.
True.
I feel like, Logan, you're so someone that's been like, I have to try all the things that make me cringe, because every time I do, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I think overall personal development is something that I've gotten really into the last, I would say, like year and a half, 2 years or so. And I think it's also become, and this could just be me because I'm consuming more of that type of content, but I do think it's become a more common conversation like on social media. When that girl aesthetic became a thing, I was like scrolling till my thumbs fell off. Like I was just like vibing hard with that girl, and I wanted to be her. But the reality was I was sitting on my couch scrolling, not being her. And so I think with all of that, you know, there's so much like noise, and that's like where I get stuck, is like you hear people like yelling at you figuratively online all day long, like, you need to wake up, you need to drink water, you need to get this much protein in, you need to take an everything shower, you need to fold all your laundry and have it organized by category and section and color. And I don't know about you guys, but I can get overwhelmed by this. I'm like, truly, does not feel like there's enough hours in the day for all of these things. So today what I want us to do is break it down and talk about the habits that we've implemented that have actually worked for us, habits that are not actually worth your time, like things we've tried and they didn't stick, and then our tips and tricks for how to actually form a new habit that lasts. So first of all, I want to know, Lane and Sanam, for you guys, what sort of role do habits play in your daily life? Are they something that you're always thinking of, always trying to implement new habits? Or do you feel like you don't really live by habits and maybe you live by something else? I'm just curious, how big of a role do you think that habits play in your daily life?
I feel like habits play a very significant role in my daily life. I am the type of person where like when things are in order and routine is where I'm thriving the most. And like even when I travel, I will still try and make habits and routines while I'm in a specific place. It's just the one thing I just feel like that, like, I don't know if it's a sense of, comes from a sense of control or like knowing what's coming next, but I personally thrive in habits.
And I would say that I am a little bit different, but the same. So I think that in my head, what I'm differentiating is habits versus routines. I think that I am like, from a habit perspective, I have a lot of habits that I know that serve me and ones that I know that don't serve me. But routines where I'm like pushing myself to do the same habits, like that doesn't serve me in the way it serves some people. I feel like knowing what habits serve me and just making it a point to ensure I am like utilizing those habits throughout the day versus like giving myself strict guidelines about like, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z every day or every morning. Like that doesn't work for me. Routine is kind of like the death of my like creativity. Like I can't live in routine, but having a list of which habits do serve me in when I do want to feel creative or when I want to feel productive or when I want to feel motivated, like just being aware of which ones like serve me in which ways is really effective for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it because I see that in the way that you live your life. Like I, like write down this super detailed schedule of all these things that I want to do in a day, and I inevitably like don't always get them done. And I feel like you give yourself more grace in a day to day, but you're somehow always more productive than me, and I always wonder why. And I feel like it's because you know like what the steps are to achieve like that desired outcome you talked about, like how you want to feel, and you kind of work backwards from there versus I stack up. Does that sound like that kind of aligns with how you look at things, or how do you feel like, because I feel like what you do works for you. I'm like, what do you do so I can do it?
Totally. So I think for me, like what's been really like a game changer for living out the way that I want to feel is almost like doing the opposite. So what habits aren't serving me and how can I like be mindful of eliminating those. And I think for me, like one really, really big thing over this past year that I've focused on is what stories am I telling myself about myself and what does my self-talk sound like in my head? And I think that those are two really, really big things that like being aware of has really helped me like shift how I'm living and like how I'm truly feeling. And for me, like how I'm feeling is like most important. So I think like we all tell ourselves these stories about ourselves, like, I don't do this, I'm not good at this. And I think that like those can be really damaging. And that's a habit that I found myself like doing a lot. Like I don't eat healthy, I don't wake up early, I can't run outside. Like these are the things that we just tell ourselves about ourselves. And I think that that has been something that I've just tried to draw awareness to about myself and like shift how I do speak about myself. So instead of I don't run outside, it's like I choose not to run outside, or I haven't been successful at running outside, things like that, where you're just changing the story you're telling yourself. And for me specifically, some of those things are reading and yoga. And like I've been trying to, when I identify something that I'm like, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't do that, like I try to challenge myself and I'm like, okay, well, what if I did do that? Like, what could that look like? And so I've been more, I think, like trying to push myself into things that I like don't inherently feel like I am or I'm good at. So I feel like I just talked in circles and I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of where my head goes, because I think over the past like 8 years of my life, I have been like really routine, habit, like I've figured out a lot of things that work for me. So this year, I think I'm really figuring out like what isn't working for me, if that makes sense.
That's like the perfect way to round it out. I feel like that is just as important, like telling yourself what you want to do versus what you don't want to do. Like both of those like make up the whole. And so I think like being able to recognize that is probably like step 2. Like the superficial way is like, oh, I see an outcome, I see a way I want to be, like let me just be that. But they're like, you've got to pull back the friction. And so I think identifying the things that don't align with that identity and pulling out the habits that are breaking that identity you're trying to craft for yourself is a way to like arrive at that happy medium of that identity that you're like seeking through.
I 100% agree. Hearing you talk about so many of these like changes that you made and how you're understanding. I remember like when we did our values deck in San Diego, like you were like putting these attributes about yourself in like the I don't want to associate with this attribute section. I'm like, wait, but like you are this, you are that. And like, I don't remember what words they were, but they were synonyms of like organized, routined, and like very much like orderly. And you're like, no, this is like what I already am. This is not what I like want to be. And it was so interesting hearing you say that, because that's always how I've identified you, but I never knew that like internally that's something that you were actually trying to veer away from. So hearing this definitely makes sense.
And I think it's like, it's not something where I'm like, oh, I don't ever want to be like that. I'm just challenging myself this year. It's like, I'm a planner. I took a vacation to be like, okay, I'm literally not going to plan one thing on this vacation. I want to see how it feels. I want to, you know, see what I learn about myself from doing that. And so just like learning what we do tell ourselves. And like, I think the best thing you can do is just start by changing how you talk to yourself. Like, because perception and how your internal voice, like it legitimately, I think it controls, like it can control your whole life. And I think if you learn to talk to yourself differently, you will feel different, you will act different, you will like literally turn into a different person. Like your actual chemicals in your brain change. Like it's real scientific things. And it is really crazy. So I would just say start talking to yourself like you're a different person, like you're the person that you want to be.
I love that. Positive self-talk.
That's a great habit.
But Logan, I feel like you are like really the opposite. You're like, this is exactly what I want to do, how I want to be. And like you make yourself do that in such like a ritualed way. And I really, really like respect and have so much like admiration for how you are in that way. What tips do you think you have used that help you really do that?
I think we may have said this a second ago, but I think we just come at the same end result from the opposite direction. Like I have like been building my foundation of like, I'm keeping the promises I make to myself like on a daily basis from like a routine perspective. And that results in me feeling a certain way, and me feeling a certain way results in me talking nice to myself and believing certain things about myself. And so I think maybe I make myself take the hard route to like get to that place, and it'd probably be a lot easier to start from the place of like talking nice to yourself and then like doing things that are also nice for yourself and your body on a daily basis. So I think both ways are totally valid. I just think it's the way our brains like work, and we encounter this at work a lot. We actually were just talking about a project yesterday, and I was like, I see how your brain is going this direction. My brain wants to go this direction, and we're thinking the exact same thing, just opposite ways. So I think for me, I really, like I said earlier, I struggle with decision fatigue. And so I can get really, really overwhelmed by the smallest things, like all those things I talked about earlier. Like the thought of having to do all those things in a day, make dinner, clean dishes, like do all the things, it just literally overwhelms me. And I truly don't know how people have time to do those things like day in, day out, every single day without fail. That's the part that I struggle with the most, is the consistency component. But one thing that I heard recently that's really helped me shift my perspective is the difference between a good day and a bad day are a few key decisions made at pivotal moments. So your discipline comes into play not when the alarm goes off in the morning at 5 a.m. Your discipline actually comes into play the night before when you're going to bed, and you're going to go to bed at 9 p.m. instead of midnight. Like that's when the discipline is, like when you really have to draw on that. And I think that's something that you guys both tell me, like, oh, you're so disciplined. And I don't feel like I'm disciplined at all. Like that's something that I really like don't give myself credit for, because I think, you know, in your own head, you know the promises you made to yourself and whether you kept them or not. So what I'm trying to do is shift my moment of discipline to be, instead of the moment like where that key decision is taking place or that new habit that I'm wanting to form, and shift it earlier. And what can I do to set myself up to make the right decision or make the habit I'm trying to build the easiest decision to make in the moment. So like if you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go to the gym, but you don't have a workout class booked, like it's so easy to be like, oh no, I'm just not going to go. So for me, it's like, how can I take a step back and like just one step before that key decision, put something into place that's going to like cause me to have that desired behavior. And that can manifest in a lot of different scenarios, but that's kind of the way I look at it. So like meal prepping, something that's always been a struggle for me, but I'm really like been focusing on my nutrition this year. Like I signed up for a meal prep service. A chef delivers my lunches and dinners to me every Monday. I've been doing it for the last like several months, and it's a luxury. I'm very grateful to be able to do that. But the cost that it is monetarily cost me compared to the cost of the stress I used to have of not having the right things to fuel my body and making snap decisions when it comes to food that didn't really serve me. The cost monetarily is so much less than the cost of that decision fatigue of having to figure out what I was going to eat every day. So I think for me is like identifying where that decision fatigue is happening and then taking it back the one step before that. What's the one step before that I can make that decision the easiest route?
100%.
Does that make sense?
You're making it a lot easier for you.
And I think the main thing that I like took away from that is you talk about there's all these different things. There's all this noise about what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, what habits serve you, what don't. And I think to like take a step back and be like, well, what do I want the desired outcome to be? How do I want to feel? How do I want to be living? And then figure out like from there, what are the habits that are going to get me to that point is a good practice, because like instead of just going through the motions of like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, Instagram tells me to do this, TikTok tells me to do this, like all of these things, it's like, okay, well, like if you do that, like what do you expect yourself to feel? What are you trying to work towards? And like identifying that, and then, okay, maybe a meal service can help me get to that point in like the most effective way. So figure out like what you want that goal to achieve, or what you want that habit to achieve. Or maybe you say, this is a trend, this is a habit, I'm curious as to what will shift if I did do this, and go into it with that mindset. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm interested to find out. So I think like identifying what that end goal is, whether it is a certain feeling or just an experimental habit change.
Yeah, for sure. I like to ask myself a lot the question of like, if given a scenario and I'm having to make a decision, I'll say, okay, what would a healthy person do? Or what would a successful person do? Or what would a good girlfriend do? Like asking myself those types of questions, and then it makes the natural choice really obvious, and it kind of takes exactly what you're saying, Lane, and like puts it into practice of like, that's the moment you stop and think. So I love that. And I love that we kind of all have different perspectives on it, because I feel like we're all like pretty high functioning individuals. Like I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, but I do think we go about it in such different ways. And I just think it's such a fascinating topic. So the next thing that I want to talk about, is just about a time in general that, you feel like you were really crushing it. Like you feel like your habits were unlocked. You were like thriving in your personal life, professional life. What factors may have been into play in a time like that, whether it's internal or external, that you feel like may have contributed to that feeling? And are there any practices that you've put into place to kind of maintain or propel that momentum?
I can take that one.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that my time in my life is kind of right now. I've talked a lot about like the growth I've had over this past year, but I want to break that down more specifically to like the past 6 to 8 weeks or so in my life. And one thing that I've been doing is trying the things that give me anxiety. So I'm like a highly anxious person, and I think I tend to push down the things that make me anxious. And this summer, over the second half of this year so far, I've really pushed myself to identify like what those things are and how I can incorporate them into my life, and like kind of just experimenting with it to see how it makes me feel. One of those things is therapy. I started doing therapy about a year ago because of like a specific instance, and therapy was always something that I went into it with like, okay, like I'm here, I want to get to here. How can I use therapy to help me get there? And something that I've done different this time is not have a plan with it. And sometimes I just show up and I'm like, I don't know where this is going to go today. And it's something my therapist has actually really encouraged me to do. She's like, being a planner, like I want you to try to not plan for our sessions, like see what comes up. And that makes me feel so anxious. When I drive to therapy and I don't know what we're going to talk about, like my hands start sweating. Like I literally like have like all of these actual physical symptoms from it. And I feel like I've found so much growth by making myself do these things that make me feel anxious. Another one is reading. Like, reading has always been something that's challenging for me because I'm dyslexic, and it's just something that I don't think I'm good at. And I've been pushing myself to do it, and I've been like trying to do it in multiple different ways, like reading on my Kindle, reading a physical book, reading about things that I'm interested in multiple different areas of my life. So becoming a mom, like spirituality, work, all of these different things that like are really kind of important to me right now. Same thing about yoga. I'm really like not flexible, which is just a random thing. Like I have like the tightest hamstrings of all time. And so I'm like insecure and anxious when I go to a yoga class because I'm like, I'm not inherently good at this. And I think by like doing all of these things, it's just like, it's made me feel less first anxious, but also just like it's just given me a different perspective on like, again, the stories I tell myself, but also just like how I'm living my life. And it also makes me feel good. I'm like, you're doing all these things that you like told yourself you couldn't do. So that's kind of my perspective on that right now.
I love that so much, Lane.
I feel like that's so great. And it sounds like you've become maybe like a little bit more accepting of those qualities about yourself that may not inherently be like standout strengths, but I wouldn't call them flaws either. Like, nobody needs to be the best yogi in the room, but it's like the point is going in and like going through the practice. And so I think it just sounds like from the way, even like how your tone shifted as you described those things, like I feel like that's part of the talking to yourself positively and showing up for yourself and being like, oh, I wasn't the best, but it also was still fun and still worthwhile, and there's value in that.
100%. And I think like being more flexible in those like areas of my life, I think something that we often don't really tie this conversation like back to during the conversation is like how it makes us different at work and how it makes us better in like business. And I think all of these things, like habits that we're creating in our personal life, are affecting us so deeply in our professional lives too. And I think by doing these things in my personal life and like making it a habit and a priority, like makes me more flexible at work and how I work with you guys and how we work with our clients. So for me, I feel like figuring out how things are personally, like it then from a professional perspective, like I reap the benefits from it, if that makes sense.
For sure.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. What about you, Sanam?
I feel like I'm also at my best place right now, like Lane. But for me, the biggest catapult was being forced to sit in the discomfort of my own feelings. I feel like I was perpetually distracting myself with the next task, whether it was burying myself in work or wanting to start something new, or that would like capture my attention and kind of distract me from like my own feelings. And so doing that for the first time, sitting in the discomfort, really helped me like feel all the feelings, but then also be able to get me where I needed to be. I remember when my therapist first told me to do that, she was like, why do you keep distracting? Like, you need to stop distracting. And it was such a jarring thing for me to hear and experience because I didn't realize that I was doing that, but that was naturally my way of coping with things, was always distraction. Like, I remember when my dad was sick in high school, I would just bake like crazy. I would bring like 60 cupcakes to school and just like pass them out to people because anytime I'd get stressed, I would just bake. And it was just like this form of distraction that I kept doing when I felt like I didn't want to feel my own feelings, which is so weird because I would definitely describe myself as someone that's in touch with my feelings and wants to discuss my feelings. But like when it comes to actually feeling them on my own, that's where I feel like I really had this big disconnect. And so being tasked to do that, and I remember like asking my therapist, I was like, is this going to even help me? Like, what is this even going to do? She's like, it's going to help you figure out where you need to be. Like right now, you don't know where you need to be, and that's okay. But sitting in the discomfort will get you closer to that than what you're doing right now. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you. And I did it, and it was so painful. But then that led me to like realizing all these new things that I actually enjoy that I didn't realize that I would enjoy because I wouldn't slow down. Like I would just do things that would like raise my cortisol and like go to like classes like berries, which are still great, but at the time it's not what I needed to do. And so doing all of those things definitely helped me form my current habits, which is having a healthy relationship with my work, getting way less stressed and stimulated. I can very easily close my computer at the end of the day and not like take it home with me when I'm laying in bed, or just being able to like prioritize my yoga or my reading, doing all the things that like truly bring me so much joy. And it's just like led to like a domino effect of so many positive things. But I would say it all stemmed from like that one pivotal conversation of forcing myself to feel what I was feeling.
That's really, really helpful. And that's what I wanted to ask you was when you spoke about sitting in your feelings and really letting yourself feel them instead of like giving way to distractions, like what on a like tactical level, what does that mean? Does that mean like sitting on your couch and like not having the TV on and like thinking through everything that's going on in your life? Or I know you mentioned like yoga, reading, other things. Like what are the things that like count as distractions, like baking, versus things that count as like fueling you and like letting you feel your feelings? Because I would love to know, because I think I do a bit of the same things as you, like lean towards the distraction. So like what does actually like sitting and feeling your feelings, like what does that entail you doing?
Yeah, so I would say like a few forms of distraction that I had were I would check in on work multiple times per day, even when I signed off, and would just like send ideas or like look at things and like find things that were wrong for me to focus on. Or I would just call people and ask how they were doing and never let them in on my own life, just like constantly ask how they were doing so I could like embed myself into their own life and kind of escape from my own. But I remember the first time I was like, okay, like I need to just like sit in my feelings. I remember signing off the computer. I was feeling extremely anxious. This was end of September of 2022. And I decided to close my computer and I was like, what should I do with myself? What should I do with myself? And so I like didn't know if I should just like go on a walk, sit on the couch, whatever. So I was like, I'm just going to go take myself on a walk and I'm just going to, what should I do? And I like needed something to listen to. I think the key in all these situations of like forming habits is, like you said, make things so easy and have something to be looking forward to. So I was like, okay, Ed Milet has a new audiobook out. I heard it's good. Let me just try an audiobook. I was very anti-audiobooks. I was only pro Kindle at the time. And so I downloaded the audiobook and then I just went on this walk and listened, and it felt like therapy in my ears of just like him like talking at me. And I just like, I felt all of the anxiety on my walk, but then I felt it and let it pass. Because I think we always forget that when you feel it, it will eventually pass. But like, it's that hump of feeling it that like you always want to avoid. And that's what I was avoiding. And so I just let myself feel every bit of anxiety I had while I was on this walk, which made me so terribly anxious. But then as I like listened to this audiobook, the anxiety went down. Then as I went down, I also felt like I had a clearer head to figure out what I needed to do next. Now, it wasn't like fully clear, but it like definitely got me a little bit closer. So then I remember coming home that same day, putting on my swimsuit and just going and jumping in the pool in my apartment, and then just like swimming around a little bit and just like changing my physical environment, and then coming home being like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to read in bed. And like, it was a really nice like flow of things that like as the day progressed, I started feeling less anxious. But that's not to say like the next day I still woke up incredibly anxious. It was just about allowing myself to feel it, but then doing something that I could look forward to that like could help kind of get me to the next step.
Okay. I love that. It sounds like it's like kind of things to keep like your superficial mind busy, but like your kind of deep thinking like open to like receive whatever it is like really going on there. So that's really helpful, and I think something that will resonate with a lot of people, because I always hear that phrase like sit with your feelings, and I know that's something like I need to do a little bit better of, but I'm like, what does that actually mean? You know what I mean? So I think like the fact that you were doing things that were physically stimulating, you were going on a walk outside, jumping in the pool, you're listening to something that's intellectually stimulating, kind of let those feelings like come to the forefront, and probably in a more productive way than like sitting on your couch having an anxiety
100%.
attack.
Also, journaling is like really helpful for feeling your feelings.
Yeah, I would say a couple things on that, like feeling your feelings and trying to really like understand like what is the cause of it and like what do I want to do about it. I think the first thing, Sanam, that you said in your routine of things, movement with like something that stimulates your brain. So I think listening to a podcast or an audiobook, something that is about like a topic that you think will like fuel your brain while you're moving your body, like that combination for me is like really, really effective. It gets my mind and body synced up, which can be really hard to do. And then like on the other side of that, I think if you're an anxious person, or if you feel like you have a disconnect between what's going on in your mind and how your body's feeling, slowing down and like doing breath work, and then trying to identify what parts of my body feel heavy and like feel like there's anxiety in it or whatnot, and like going through a practice of like, okay, how does it feel? What does it look like? Like, what does that need? And just trying to focus on it. I feel like we do all these things to distract ourselves, and we're not really like taught to just think about it. Like, think about not like, oh, what's causing it? What do I need to do to fix it? Just like really think about it. And I think for me, forcing myself to slow down and just do that, sometimes I just have these like revelations of like what I do need. Like, maybe it is going to float in my pool. Maybe it is going for a walk, but like it'll like, by focusing on that feeling and like the anxiety or what it looks like, things like that, like it kind of can guide like what you should do, what that thing should be to help you to like sit in your feelings and like what steps you need to take. So sometimes maybe just like actually try to sit and think about it.
Very true.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of times you can be like stressed into like inaction, which I think is, you know, kind of not progress. Like that's where I find myself a lot, is I see all these things. I'm like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. And then I just end up doing nothing because I can't decide. So I think those are really good tips on just like listening to your feelings, Sanam, listening to your body lane, and just like coming up with like a game plan. Like, you know, we're talking about daily habits, but these are also kind of, I feel like red zone habits. Like, wow, look at me with the football analogy. But like, you know, like this is like kind of like your, like how Sanam, your morning this morning, like you like weren't feeling your best, and these habits were like what brought you like out and able to like conquer the rest of your day. So I think knowing the difference, like what are your day-to-day habits, what are your kind of Hail Mary habits that you employ like when you really need to like recenter yourself, those are like good tools to have in your toolbox.
I love that. I agree. And I would say like one thing, if you're like, okay, I don't know where to start, one thing that I have done in the past that has helped me is literally like making a list of like, these are the things that I think I am. These are the things that I think I am not. And these are like the things that I want to be. And like literally just the practice of writing it out can help give you some mental clarity. So lists, I feel like, are a huge thing for me. I use them in like every part of my life. But if you're like, okay, like what habits do I currently have? What habits do I want? I would say just start by like writing it down. I do this. I do this. I don't do this. I can't do this. Like get the stories that you're telling yourself in your head and like how you feel about yourself down onto paper, and then think about how you want to change them.
I love that. And I think having like a dedicated resource of like where you put those thoughts down on paper, this is like so granular, but it's something I really struggled with. Like I just couldn't find like a medium to get those thoughts down in the way that I wanted. Like I did the yellow legal pads for a long time. I did notes on my iPhone. I did like a physical like journal for a while. And it's really like finding out like where's your hub for all of those thoughts that are floating around in your head. And we over here are big proponents of the iPad. The Good Notes app specifically is a great hub, and the pencil, ideal and very necessary. When I went to get my iPad, Lane was like, you have to get the pencil. You don't use your pencil?
Sanam doesn't use
I
it
only
for
use it
journaling,
for
her
work
iPad.
stuff, like for like industry news and everything. I have to like fit.
Wait, really?
I
know
only
that.
journal in my iPad when I like have it with me and I have absolutely nothing else.
Oh, you love your papier. Am I saying that right? Those
papier
journals.
I love those. I just think being off technology is like way better for my brain because it's like so stimulating for me when I have like bright colors. That's why I also love my Kindle. I don't understand how people can read on your iPad. It's just like so bright and like so much stimulation. Whereas like the Kindle just feels like old school, black and white, not even black and white, like gray and black. But I just like love physically writing. I think it's like so cathartic on paper when I like physically feel it.
Yeah. So I think like finding like whatever hub works for you, whether it's like pen and paper, iPad. I know people use Notion. Like so many people talk about like their tools. I've tried a lot of them. I think you just have to experiment, but finding out what works for you in a system of like, where do you gather your thoughts? Where do you look at your habits, your priorities, your goals, and like reflect on that and like build on that over time. I think finding a system is a really big hack towards getting your kind of life together and like your days looking the way that you feel like you want them to from a habit perspective.
I totally agree with that. And for anybody that is interested in the iPad route, I recommend an iPad with a pencil, the Good Notes app, which Logan said, and then create some different journals. Like some examples on mine are goal setting, Blossom brands, mood boosters, travel planning, to-do lists, workouts, meal prep, figure out like what you want to keep track of and make separate journals for it. And then like when you're journaling, move things around, organize it, like make it something fun. That has been like huge for me with journaling. And like Logan said, having a reference to kind of go back and like see your progress is really, really effective. And it kind of like reinforces what you're doing and just makes you feel good about it. Cause you're like, whoa, look at this progress I've done. And for me, the organization aspect of it and like writing and then being like, oh, where does this fit? Where can I move it? Just like the ability to do that on an iPad and technology. Obviously, there can be, like Sanam said, some people don't want to be on technology for it, but I like love being able to organize it and then being able to easily read back on certain times of my life. I think that's been really cool for me too.
Love that. So we've talked a lot about like habits we want to develop, like certain ways and hacks that we've had, habits we've tried that have helped us and like how we're feeling, how we're like living on a day-to-day basis. Let's say you've felt your feelings, you've done the walks, you've meditated, you've journaled, you've identified like the habits that you want to form in your life, but you're having trouble making them stick. What are some tips that you guys would give listeners on other ways that you can make sure that habits you want to build are things that you ingrain into your routines and they actually stick?
I feel like in order to make habits stick, you have to make the barrier to entry so small, so minimal, and you have to be excited for them, like in some form or another. So like, for example, when I started going to 6:30 a.m. yoga, like you said, Logan, I would leave my clothes out, and then I invested in the Hatch alarm clock. When I wake up, the room is already lit at 5:30 in the morning in the dead of winter, which is like typically pitch black outside. When I wake up with light, like it makes waking up and getting out of bed like 30% more easier than it was if I were to just wake up with my Alexa and I would just have like a loud noise in a dark room. That like really makes such a difference. 2, I realized, for example, I love going on my morning walks, but I just like wasn't feeling as fueled for my walks in my neighborhood. I think because it's not that big, and so I'm always taking the same type of route, and I need differentiation. And so I started driving to the beach or driving to Beverly Hills for my walks, and doing so much better. And then when I go to each of those places, I have things that I do in each of those places that bring me joy. So if I'm in Manhattan Beach, I'll get an acai bowl. If I'm in the Palisades, I'll get a smoothie. If I'm in Beverly Hills, I'll get a matcha from my favorite place and then go sit there and have a toast after. It's like little things that I associate with each of those like routines that make it so much more enjoyable, and then I just continue to build off of it, which like makes me so excited. Okay, I'm gonna go to 6:30 yoga. Yeah, I'm gonna be tired, but then I'll pack my stuff, go like work at a coffee shop on the beach after, then I'll go take myself for a little beach walk, then pick up lunch on the way home, then I come home, it's already 2 o'clock and so much of my day is gone, but I'm so productive.
You are the queen of mini
I
rewards.
love rewarding
You're
myself.
really good at that.
I am a child.
Yeah. I think one thing I would just add from my perspective in terms of building and keeping new habits is picking one thing at a time. I like to kind of say like the focus of the next like month is like really I'm going to work on my nutrition. Like that's going to be the main thing. If I do this right, then I'm a winner. And because I can get kind of overwhelmed in being like, oh, I need to do these 47 things right. And so I'll pick one thing, and whatever that thing is that you want to do in a day, do it first thing in the day, because your motivation is never higher throughout the day than it is first thing in the morning. Like if you think about it, once you get through the end of the day, there have been like maybe distractions that have gone on, other things that have gone awry in your day that you couldn't have predicted for. So for me, when I'm trying to build a new habit, I will put it on my calendar for my first task of the morning. And when I get those things checked off in that time, I feel so good about myself. So that would be my tip is if you're trying to form a new habit, think about what time of the day you're trying to do that habit and try to push it as early as you can so you can check it off the list.
And then you'll feel good about yourself all day because you're like, I did the one thing I said I was going to do. And so then like you have this sense of confidence going into the rest of your day.
Mm-hmm. Well, that about rounds up our conversation. Thank you guys so much for sharing your thoughts. I feel like there were so many good nuggets in this episode, and I'm feeling re-inspired to kind of go tackle some of those habits that I've had lingering or maybe were a thing and weren't a thing and need to be a thing again. So thank you guys for joining us today. Lane and Sanam, thanks for your thoughts. And also wanted to add for our content tip of the day, if you are a Kindle girly or an audiobook stan, we highly recommend the books Atomic Habits by James Clear and The 5 a.m. Club by an author who I cannot currently remember the name of, but both of those books are I read Atomic Habits like 2 years ago, maybe 5 a.m. Club a year ago. I know Sanam, you read both of them years ago.
I think we read 5 a.m. Club around the same time.
Yeah. I would say if those like concepts have stuck with us this long, there's definitely some value in them. So I would definitely recommend checking those two out. If anybody got something great out of this episode, we would love to hear your feedback. Please go ahead and head over to our Instagram, comment on our latest post. Let us know what habits you'll be incorporating into your week, and we'd love to cheer you on along the way. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Monday through Sunday. If you're building a career, a business, or any relationships, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us.
With that in mind, we would be so grateful if you can spare 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast. Your reviews help spread the message to more people that work doesn't have to suck.
By the way, if you're looking for your community, join us on Instagram and TikTok at Monday through Sunday Pod. We're all about connecting our like-minded listeners together. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about by sending us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.